Hello, you are with Astrology Beyond Today. Kiril, we will look at the similarities and differences between astrology and human design. Knowing Goranov. Hello, Yoan. So, the goal of today's video is to explore how these two systems complement each other and how they differ. Help to say something on the topic.
Astrology as a system is quite an old system, primarily related to observing the cycles of the planets, and the most accurate thing that can be said, in my opinion, is that it is a tracking of the cosmic clock. It operates on the principle of the cycles of planets around the Sun in the solar system, with each planet being used with different archetypes, different cyclicity. For the much closer planets, Mercury and Venus, which are before Earth, they have cycles that are much faster and are actually more important for a person's daily life. Whereas, for example, the slow planets Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they are associated with more global cycles and more significant events in a person's life. They are linked to more key events. For example, Saturn can be related to a person's career, meaning the main archetype of Saturn is connected to career separately. Each planet has phases of retrograde, right? And these retrogrades directly affect the way of expression, the way of thinking in people, meaning a person can be born during a retrograde period, and this will always cause certain changes in the way that planet functions. In human design, as far as I know, they work with an additional chart, the so-called prenatal.
The difference and why many people get confused about the natal car and what is the permanent wheel. Here we can say that the commonality between human design and the story is that it also measures cycles, meaning it works in the same way with the planets and the different aspects of a chart. What human design also does is that it considers not only the natal chart, meaning from the moment of a person's birth, but it also adds another birth chart. In fact, 3 months before a person's birth, and according to Henson's theory, that's when the soul enters the human body, meaning it works with duality. The body and the soul as such. We can also say about the basis, providing two systems, it is one of the oldest with the story. We can even say esoteric sciences, over 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Henson is founded by 35 years ago in 1987. It was received by one person. That is, here we can also say that the difference between the two systems is that together we have one person who received the knowledge and passed it on to others, whereas astrology, being a very ancient science, has been examined over millennia by many different people and from different eras, and everyone contributes with their knowledge, which we can see that in two things we have both advantages and disadvantages. Meaning, on one hand, in astrology, since everyone over the millennia contributes, but with their thinking, they might distort the knowledge, they might develop it. In design, we have only one person, meaning in this case we have a more centralized system because there is only one authority, one source. But on the other hand, the entire system is filtered through his personality. In other words, for thousands, he always said it is an experiment that you must pass through yourself, as should be the case with any system. Whether it is astrology or human design, it is essentially a personal experiment.
While in astrology, as they say, from 6 to 10,000 years, it has different claims and is actually one of the most accurate I have come across, after quite a bit of digging, reading, and so on. Well, actually, astrology, the oldest roots of the conditions vary from nearly 10,000 years ago. Subscribe. From India, that is where the root of the so-called Vedic astrology, is, which to this day is actually one of the most used systems globally, meaning percentage-wise. Vedic astrology accounts for about 60 to 70% of the astrological topics worldwide, and actually, thanks to it, we have the 12 zodiac signs. The exact house system that exists in Western astrology, but the fact is that actually from there comes the initial classification of the planets. As you caught me, that we have the main 7 factors, including 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon, plus 5 planets, and from there on, historically speaking, even the division of the week into 7 days comes precisely from the astrological factor of what the 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon, plus 5 planets. We say 5 because in Vedic astrology, the modern planets known in Western astrology as Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are not used. In fact, the main thing that is very important to know is that Vedic astrology is one of the roots. Nowadays, if you start reading about Vedic astrology, it might sound quite fatalistic at times, but this is again very good. You mentioned the distortions, which is important to consider, and that's why I like to say that subscribe. In Vedic astrology, it is very important for a person to understand the principle of how archetypes blend, whereas in Western astrology, we already have a bit more psychological intervention, which, to be honest, is also quite visible in human design. I often like to tell my students and clients that, in fact, human design is best viewed even as astropsychology. What do you think about this? Yes, that's absolutely true.
When we work with ancient and historical sciences like astrology, what we can see is that the knowledge and wisdom given to people throughout the ages was provided according to their level of consciousness. In other words, the consciousness of a person 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and now is very different. That is, even though there are universal principles that have not changed since then, we also evolve in consciousness. Human design has come in this era where it integrates ancient sciences, integrates ancient systems, astrology, the chakra system, I Ching, the Chinese teaching, and I Ching are integrated into today's era so that the modern person with modern consciousness can use them in the present time. In other words, the difference actually helps us understand that both systems work with the planets, meaning both systems work with the hour, date, and place of birth. This is how the calculations are made. The interesting thing here is that most people are actually familiar with Chinese astrology and they know about its existence.
In the US, they measure the years in terms of the year of the ox and so on, but actually the Chinese also use the day, month, and hour of birth in the same way. And actually, I like to put it this way. If we look at Western astrology, a person has a zodiac sign, right? The sun in a given sign. In Vedic astrology, they look at the moon. And in Chinese astrology, they primarily look at Jupiter because of this. For the Chinese, moon is entering a new year is often associated with the cycle of Jupiter. Jupiter has a 12-year cycle, and there we also have a zodiac sign and an element. Natural phenomena are also considered there, which is not only related to the year. For example, it could be a metal rat or an earth rat and so on, but we can also have a month, meaning we have a month, a day, and an hour. In fact, a person there has 1 to 4 signs. This is reflected in astrology as follows. We have the sun, which represents the month, the year is Jupiter, and the week, the day of the week, is associated with the moon. The hour is associated with the zenith, so in this way we can connect them as systems, and actually in human design. As far as I know, there is a similar division. There, the type might change, but a person can be, for example, a manifestor throughout the entire day, or a generator throughout the entire day, and so on. It works with centers, and the so-called
It borrows. just like in astrology with the planets. Similarly, it borrows from the Indian chakra system, with the difference that, according to human design, a mutation occurred 250 years ago, meaning we are no longer primarily 7 centers as 7 chakras in Ayurveda, but actually there are now 9. There is also quite a nocturnal part, meaning it integrates ancient knowledge in the new era. It integrates and actually scientific knowledge like quantum physics, like biochemistry. That is, he even managed to predict something that science discovered 10 years later and proved, namely the so-called neutrino particles. When chemization was discovered in 87, science believed that neutrino particles had no mass. Neutrino particles are particles that are created in the core of every sun in our solar system, our central star. These neutrino particles are created and have the ability to penetrate through spaces. In other words, they are not like photons, because photons in a room cannot penetrate if there is a wall, whereas neutrino particles penetrate everywhere. They were not discovered at the beginning of the 20th century. Now, when the knowledge of human design was introduced, its founders pointed out that they actually carry a very small mass, but they do carry mass. What does it mean that by carrying mass, they carry information, bombarding a person? At any given moment, every second, there are 3 trillion neutrino particles per square inch, meaning if we could see them, we wouldn't be able to distinguish well. It would be a sea of neutrino particles. Every second, 4 trillion neutrino particles pass through, constantly irradiating us with information. So, what does this mean for astrology and human design? For people who are more skeptical, they say how we can extract information about ourselves through the date of birth. Well, so these neutrino particles, when they pass through Mars or Venus, for example, they carry information from the magnetic field of Mars or Venus. Every planet has a magnetic field, which is scientifically proven. In the same way, a person also has a magnetic field, and when a neutrino particle passes through Venus and reaches a person, it carries information from Venus. And actually, by carrying this information, it programs our DNA with this information at the moment of birth, along with a form of ricochet, if I can put it that way. Perhaps the most interesting fact is that not only do the planets carry information to us, but we also carry information to the planets. In other words, in the 25 years that I have lived on, I have been mixed with trillions and 3 neutrino particles over 25 light years from me. That is, my consciousness, my way of life, also carries information about the totality and the inhabited. This is what every single person does. That is, the way it is not like a collective consciousness. We think about one planet, we also influence it.
Absolutely. It means that in reality, every single action has a reaction. And in reality, that's why there is no person who is, how should I say, alive and whose life has no meaning. Absolutely, every single person contributes to the meaning of life for all people. And this is very well observed in the effect of the patrol car, which is actually a very interesting scientific model that is talked about. But the idea is that absolutely every single person is here to complete a given mission. And by the way, the mission can also be seen in astrology. And the best way to be able to do your job is when you have,
How to put it most correctly? When you have the understanding of who you are, where you are, what you are doing, when it is good to do it. Well, actually, this is the commonality with the Henson story, that you see your mission and your contribution to the world, right? It influences the whole and the overall influence. You see your part in the whole. That is the goal. The goal of these two systems is self-realization, to achieve your personal individual potential and to find your place in the greater whole. Doesn't the drop influence the ocean? The ocean influences the drop, right?
and that's why it's not correct. In principle, at least in my opinion, it's not right to deny the influence of astrology and human design, because there are quite a few movements of this type that are literally fanaticized, in which it is said, that human design is not astrology. Yes, it is not astrology, but it uses astrology to a large extent, meaning those people who actively engage with human design and astrology can easily agree that, in fact, the two systems are simply the same thing viewed from a different angle. And actually, when we look at things from different angles, then we can truly be objective and subjective. We cannot exclude.
These systems, meaning they are part of the collective consciousness of humans and help in understanding
of the world and the universal principles. So overall, that's it from us. There's more to discuss on this topic, and we can explore many additional similar themes. If you want, subscribe to the astrology channel Embryon, or in Bulgarian, Astrology. And actually, feel free to ask questions. There's no problem. We will answer them. We'll make videos as long as something interests you as a topic. We will gladly make it a theme. That's it from us. It was very pleasant. Until next time.